to another edition of the Don't Argue, all thanks to Palmerbet, and we are getting down to the business end of the season. Preliminary final this weekend. Kirk Gidley, one of the stars of the sport, make no mistake about it. Gids, sadly, mate, we bid farewell to your Newcastle Knights last week. In the end, mate, they got towed up by the Auckland or the New Zealand Warriors, mate. It was a 30-point victory, but gee whiz, the last 10 or 12 weeks has been absolutely enormous, mate, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, 100%, Matty. I think they definitely got the buy-in, mate, from the Nova Castrians, mate, again. It's been a long time since the club celebrated 10 wins in a row, maybe the first time, I think, in a full season. But, mate, just, the excitement, 3 sold-out stadiums at the back end of the year, first home semi since '06. So, yeah, it was a pretty great vibe and atmosphere around town. There's no doubt about that. But they went out pretty quickly in that game over in New Zealand. I mean, the Warriors played great. Their line speed was outstanding. The Knights made it tough dropping the ball in the first set, but the Warriors just didn't give them a sniff, mate. Kalen Ponga had no space. I mean, the two of the best carriers, two of the best wingers in the competition, Dom Young and Greg Marju, had very little meterage and carries, mate. They sort of seemed to get towed up with any of their yardage carries. So Warriors did a great job and deserved to go through to the next round. So, but yeah, great 10 weeks for the Knights.
And you nailed it there, Gids. I reckon they got off to an absolute flyer, the Warriors. Shawnee Johnson was magnificent, but just, it was always going to be hard to call back, especially when you're playing them on their home deck and the crowd's so influential, isn't it?
For sure, mate. Yeah, I mean, you need the opposite to go down. What happened on the weekend? You need the Warriors dropping at the first set of the game to quieten the crowd down. So, they made it tough to start with. I mean, I think it was even the first 10 minutes, mate. The Knights might have had 2 sets, and I think they dropped it twice. And so the first 10 to 15 minutes, the Knights were under the pump and seemed to be on their line defending most of that. And, geez, mate, that's a tough way to kick off a semi-final, a do-or-die semi-final where it's just utilising plenty of the petrol. So it makes it hard for even the second half and the back end of the game to get back into it.
Righto, Gids. How do you rate the Newcastle Knights season, mate? Where does it sit?
Well, mate, there was almost 2 seasons in one. I mean, they started the year okay, but then there was from that April through to the middle part of the year, they struggled. There was some inconsistencies. I mean, Kalen Ponga had obviously missed a lot of footy at the start of the year. I mean, him playing 5'8", I think, didn't work. I was always a big fan of him playing at fullback. So, yeah, his transition back to fullback was a big part of their turnaround in their season. So, mate, 10 wins in a row in a home semi-final, and to make top 6, isn't it, I suppose? So,
great effort.
I think, mate, it was a pretty good effort. 8 out of 10 for me.
I was going to say, so B+, 8 out of 10, B+.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if they got through to top 4, it would have been an outstanding effort.
Yeah.
Although, mate, every team wants to be there, grand final day. There's no doubt about that. Pre-season kicks off, you want to be there grand final day. But I think given the year the Knights had, I think they'll be content with where they finished, but they'll want to go even better. They won't be happy with the way they went out, but they'll want to go better next year.
Springboard for next season too, that is for sure. And the Warriors march on to a prelim final against the Brisbane Broncos. That is going to be a beauty. We'll get to that a little bit later on, kids. But the other game, Friday night's game, it was unbelievable again. A classic Melbourne Storm. Amy, Friday night special, wasn't it? Will Wishart was the star of the show, 78th minute. They were gone. They just kept throwing the ball around. And he plucked one from the sky, mate, and got himself across the line. It was just an unbelievable game. And how often have we seen that from the Melbourne Storm, Gids?
Yeah, no, mate, we spoke about, the battle between both these clubs. I mean, the Roosters had a pretty decent finish to the year. I think they actually underachieved where we all thought they'd be back into the year. I think we were talking about them to be a grand final contender. But still, it was a huge effort for them to get to this stage, and going down to Melbourne when Melbourne had been towed up sort of the week before was going to be a tough one. But yeah, come down to one of the final plays there, and great kick by Munster, crossfield kick, and Warbrick come down with it. Great catch, great try. But it was a tough battle, that game. Might take a little bit out of the Storm for this week.
I couldn't agree more, mate. But what about Craig Bellamy, masterstroke? Do you reckon bringing Harry Grant off the bench, kids?
Yeah, there's been plenty of commentary made around whether that's the right way to go again this week, and from all the experienced players that are in commentary now, guys who'll play with him, Cameron Smith and Billy Slater, are all saying that it's probably a good tactic to just take him out of the tough stuff early, because he's probably too good for his own good, if that makes sense. I mean, he gets involved, mate, in everything. He's tough, he's resilient, he's a competitor. So that first 10 minutes of the game, he probably goes too hard, and for the coach, he's probably thinking, Craig Bellamy, one of the best in the game. How do I just remove him from that situation of getting too excited and possibly drain a bit of petrol and keep him for the majority of the game where we need him. His speed and his running game is one of the best in the NRL, and that's what they need out of him to make sure he's making an impact on the field. So probably taking him out of that bash and barge early in the game is a good thing. But mate, as a player, I can tell you, Manny, as a player, he'd rather be running out there and playing, mate, from the first minute. There's no doubt about that.
Well, the Storm are going to need Harry Grant, and they're going to need a big game from Cam Munster for mine. Munster's been good, but he hasn't, been that electrifying kind of match-winning, heroics, has he? So, I think if they're gonna upset the Panthers, they need those two to absolutely fire on the weekend.
Well, you do, mate. You need Munster getting the ball on some quick play the balls where he's a great runner of the footy. Jerome Hughes, great organiser, and I always love that combination around structured halves who look after the game plan, kicking game, and call the sets. But you do need that offset by someone who's, I guess, off the cuff, a bit of an X factor. And that's why Jerome Luai and Cleary, I think, go so well together, because they're two totally different players. And Luai's a great runner of the footy, really unpredictable. Munster, great runner of the footy, unpredictable, strong with his carries, and they're both their halves are very much the structure and guide the team around and steer the ship.
Righto, Gids, how do you rate the Roosters season? To be honest, mate, it's only been the back half of the year for mine, because I thought they were really disappointing early.
Mate, I've never seen the Roosters under so much pressure, Matty, this year. I thought the pressure for their captain, James Tedesco, was harsh, really harsh. Yep. I mean, I admire him, mate, as a player. I think he's a great leader, great competitor, super, obviously, talented. His footwork, his yardage carries, his ball playing when he's on set play. So I love him as a player. I thought it was harsh, some of the criticism he come under during Origin and even post-Origin. But I think they underachieved, for a team and a club that has the buying power and the influence to be able to continually recruit experienced and big name players. I think it's an underachievement, and they only scraped through to the 8 in the final round, and yep, they performed. They got through to the second round of the semis, but I still think it's an underachievement to finish where they are.
Righto, Gids.
I think they'd admit that too.
Well, you give the Knights a B+. We kind of settled on an 8 out of 10. What are you giving the Roosters, mate?
Well, mate, I'm sure you'd have to look back through the tapes, but I'm sure I had them in the grand final. And again, it was due to the roster they had, and I thought, I don't know, but I would have had them in the top 4, if not pushing for a grand final.
You definitely did, and you also brought out there. This is the black highlighter, mate, but you did bring out the red one. The red one come out, and you did put a line through them.
Well,
a little bit that was the face there.
The red pen was the catalyst to the change in their season. I reckon there might have been maybe they tuned into the Palmer Bet segment made every week. They don't argue, and maybe it was the catalyst. But look, I brought the red pen out, I think 3 weeks out from the semi-finals when they were struggling. They were still struggling. Or it might have been 4 weeks out from the semi-finals, but they just scraped in by beating the South last round. And they had a pretty decent run back end of the year, but that was about the only run. 6 weeks, I think it was.
They only had to lose one of those games and their season was over. So the red pen was justified, mate. Don't worry. You don't have to worry about justifying it to me, mate. I was all over it, big fella. Hey, let's have a look, Palmer Bet. Let's have a look at the premiership market. And has it really changed a great deal? Panthers went from $2.10 to $1.85. Broncos 260, just tightened up ever so slightly to 250. Storm stayed rock solid at $11, and the Warriors come from 15s into 12s. So no real market mover there. You'd probably say the Panthers just tightening up and being overwhelming favourites, I guess, Gids.
I think deservedly so too, Matty. I mean,
yep.
One of the form team over the past 3 to 4 years, I would say, three minor premierships in a row. I think it's 3 out of the 4 years minor premiers, and also is this they're going for their third straight GF? I think it is. Yeah. So they deservedly be short favourites. And mate, the last one, which I think it's the most significant stat. I think the best defensive team in the competition, and by far, like their for and against was by far the best in the competition, even with second place Broncos. So, they'll be tough to beat this week, and they'll be tough to beat in the grand final. But, mate, if the Warriors are a chance, I think, Storm are a chance. They've got to do something different, and I think Craig Bellamy and the team will be aware of that. Whether it's let's kick it, let's kick him behind early, let's shift in our yardage carries, let's shift on kick returns. I think you've got to do something different, and that comes with risk, I suppose, because you're doing something that comes with risk, shifting yardage, shifting on kick returns, kicking on early tackles. If they're going to be wedging hard defensively, that comes with a lot of risk and potential errors early in the sets, and that puts a lot of pressure on your team.
Right, I see. You're happy to stay with the Panthers, mate, obviously to win the flag. You've been with them for a fair while, mate. They're the best team in your eyes. I must admit, I'm on the Broncos. That's where my multis have been playing over the last couple of months, kids, and I reckon they're still nice value at $2.50. Grand final Quinella. Do we go the short way here, kids? Panthers, Broncos at $1.48. Panthers, Warriors, $4.60. Broncos, Storm, $6.20, and the Storm Warriors, 2 outsiders at $19. Are you thinking the 2 best teams in the home and away seasonal playoff?
Well, I think so, mate. And I think part of that plays to the week off. I just think the week off in today's game, I mean, it's always played a part, obviously, but I just think, as we've seen over the last few weeks, the injury toll, blokes, calf injuries, Daniel Safudi out with a hemi, captain's run day before the game. So fatigue and the pressure of the year, week in, week out, and that intensity keeps going up every week. I think the week off is going to play a huge part this year and going forward, just because it's a huge toll on the body, not just physically, mentally, but when it comes to high impact contacts and muscle tears or muscle fatigue, then it's hard to come back from that. I was surprised that Sean Johnson got back through last week's game, played 80 minutes. So, and again, Jerome Hughes was ruled out day before the game, I think it was, with same calf injury, calf fatigue, calf strain. So it makes it hard, that's for sure.
Righto, big fella. Let's have a look at the round of matches. Prelim final, of course, 2 games. Panthers Storm kicks us off Friday night, 7:50 to Core Stadium. It'll be a big crowd there, I'm tipping, mate. Panthers at $1.19. Storm at $4.65. That's unreal. Panthers at the line, minus 12.5 at $1.90. Storm plus 12.5 at $1.90. Key stats for the Panthers. This is huge. Jerome Luai likely to return from injury. That shoulder injury, of course. Nathan Cleary rushed to hospital during the week with that finger injury, mate. That was serious for a little period of time, but thank God he is going to play. And Isaac Targo is also on track to return after missing that first week of the finals against the Warriors. For the Storm, Jerome Hughes, Calf, and Xavier Coates will be racing the clock to return to the side for Friday's clash. If Hughes is out, Tyrone Wishart will take his spot in the team. Key stats here also. The Panthers won both their clashes this year. So in round 18, it was 34-16. In round 23, 26-6, so comfortably. Panthers are looking to make their 4th straight grand final. Last team to do that was the Storm in 2006 all the way through to 2009. Panthers have won 7 of their last 11 games against the Storm, and the Panthers have won their last 7 straight finals games. That is probably the stat that I reckon says it all.
Jeez.
They are up and about, Gids.
Mate, that's a great stat. Last 7 straight finals games. Wow, that's been a nice feeling every time you get to the semi-finals. It doesn't mean, mate, you're guaranteed to win this one, that's for sure. I do think, with some previous uncertainty with, Justin Olam and Remus Smith being out of the team for different periods of the year. I mean, Nick Mooney's been great at fullback with Pappenhausen being out. I do think the yardage carries can play a big part. Brian Totto, obviously one of the best in the competition. Dylan Edwards, he's one of the biggest work ethics in the competition as far as yardage carries, plays a huge part for the Panthers. Obviously, I think Jerome Luai's got to be a long shot. If he plays this week, he'll be targeted. There's no doubt about that. Melbourne Storm have got a history of targeting all players and all key players, but certainly if you're coming back from a dislocated shoulder.
Kids, if he doesn't play prelim, he has another week off, so they win. Then do they risk him, in a grand final? Like I look at it and I think he's got to play prelim to play grand final.
Yeah, you're right, mate. I think they've got enough depth to go through without him because we've seen that. I mean, they've proven that every Origin series over the last 3 years they've had. When both halves have been out, Luai and Cleary, previous halves out of reserve grade have stepped up and they've maintained their winning percentage through an Origin period. So they've got depth there, and they seem to be that old next man up does the job. So I think it's a big risk if he does play this week. I'm sure as a player, Jerome Luai will be wanting to play to prove himself this week, so he's right for next week. But I think there's a lot of risk in that. And Jack Hogger, mate, he done a great job when he filled in for Nathan Cleary when he was out with his hamstring this year. Thought he'd done a really good job. But be interesting to see if Luai lines up this weekend. I mean, probably just their full pack. I mean,
the odds are fairly spread, aren't they here? So are you thinking it's going to be a solid win by the Panthers, mate, or are you thinking it's going to be a close contest?
I think it'll be a solid win. I think if Melbourne come to a core stadium looking to do something different and it comes off, then it could be real competitive. I think they've brought Sofa Solomona. Are they? I'm just trying to think. No, he's still named on the bench. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts.
Yeah.
Like you know what, mate? If he's on the bench and I'm the opposition team, I'm happy with that. He's a big unit and he does some damage when he carries the ball defensively and he puts some heat on the other team. So, I mean, maybe they start him off the bench because they're looking to have an impact off him when he comes on. But I'd be throwing him in. I think it's throw all your eggs in one basket at the moment for the Melbourne Storm.
They've got to get off to a fire. They can't be chasing. They can't be chasing Bud all day, mate.
Nah,
if they go a try or tries down early, that's all. I reckon she's all over.
And I don't think you can play the safe game, Matty. I don't think you can play, let's have a crack at beating the Panthers, completing our sets, kicking early, kick chase. I don't think you'll beat them at their own game like that because they're too experienced, they're fit, they're previous.
That's where Grant and Munster are going to be so important, aren't they? Because they're creative.
Yeah, and mate, they like to play off the cuff. I thought about it during the week. If I was Melbourne Storm this week, I'd be having some drills at training where we used to play these drills around trying to lock up offloads, and it was a bit of a battle between trying to offload and for the defensive team trying to lock it up. And I think that can play a part if there's a bit of a game plan there from Melbourne. Right, we're going to go into this game and we're going to look to try and offload the ball as much as we can because number one, it takes out energy. Offloads creates another tackle. It ends up being an 8-tackle set or 9-tackle set. And that can be really frustrating for the other team, thinking, well, shit, why aren't we locking the ball up here? Number one, it's draining some petrol out. And then at halftime, when the coach comes in, what's the first statistic he's talking about? Lock up the ball and stop the offloads.
Yeah.
But that's hard to do when it's preempt.
Yeah.
And I think that can be another point of difference if Melbourne go into the game around potentially kicking early, whether that's, sort of midfield or attacking sets, and also, hey, we're gonna go into the game with an attitude of let's offload and trying to create something different.
Righto, Gids. So 13 plus, are you thinking for the Panthers? Anything else? Any time try scores or anything you're thinking?
I think so. I just think I think 13 plus because of what they've done over the last few years and because of their defensive record this year and probably the last couple of years.
Righto. Love it, big fella. Let's move along to the next game. It's the Broncos v the Warriors. Saturday, 7:50 at Suncorp Stadium. It is going to be huge. And just down the road, there'll be an AFL game that'll just be finishing at about that time. So it is going to be absolutely a buzz in Brisbane on the weekend. Head-to-head, the Broncos at $1.26, Warriors at $3.90 at the line. The Bronx minus $10.5, Warriors plus $10.5, $1.90. Key stats, all thanks to Palmerbet. Broncos, no injury concerns. Only decision will be if Kevy Walter selects Corey Oates over Jesse Arthurs. So that's going to be interesting. For the Warriors, they got no injuries either. Sean Johnson pulled up well, of course, from that night's game, so he'll be right to take his place. Broncos won their only clash this year in round 13. This is a cracking game. I remember this one, 26-22 in New Zealand. Went right down to the wire. Broncos are looking to make their first grand final since 2015. Warriors are looking to make their first grand final since 2011. Can they step up? The Warriors finished fourth and won 16 games, but lost all 4 of their games against teams that finished above them. Panthers twice, Broncos once, and the Storm once. So that's a bit of a damning stat for Warriors supporters. What are you thinking, Gids?
Yeah, well, mate, I was impressed by the Warriors' defence last week and specifically their line speed. I thought it was outstanding. You know, when the Knights were in yardage, even over the back end of the half, they just kept doing those little sort of small bombs where they weren't competing, but they were just landing inside that 10-metre bracket between sideline and try line. The Knights just continued to take it out of yardage. So I think their line speed, their defence from last week, if they can continue into this week, will be tough. The thing is, mate, the speed of the game that the Broncos took to the Melbourne Storm, what was that, 2 weeks ago at Suncorp, I thought was sensational. I thought they were really aggressive in their line speed. I think it was built up a bit more of a aggressive contest from the media in the lead up. You know, even some of the press conference the statistics around Storm going well up there. So I think there was a bigger build up in how aggressive that performance would be with both teams. I think it's a little bit of a different story for the Warriors and Broncos this week, but I think the Warriors will struggle to stick to the speed of the game. You know, it's going to be tough because, man, you look at these outside backs, you got Walsh, Staggs, Farnworth, Cobbo, Ezra Mann.
Yeah.
There's some talk around whether Corey Oates will be brought in. I'd go with Corey Oates personally. Just again, he's a big body. He's tough with yardage carries. He's good under the high ball. It's a bit of a harsh call for Jesse Arthurs, but I'd be bringing Corey Oates in to the team as well.
Right, mate.
And throw in Adam Reynolds. You know, the experience of Adam Reynolds, he's been a huge impact on the Broncos' success. He's great kicking games. Again, you talk about halves that are different. Ezra Mann, speed, can play off the cuff, be a runner of the ball. Adam Reynolds, just guide the team, steer the ship, call the sets, kicking game, think about what's next. And then, mate, their forward pack, I just named a few, wrote a few names down here. Flegler, Haas, Capewell's experience. Jordan Ricky's a young, big body, athletic, and Carrigan, sensational work ethic and tough. I mean, the Warriors have got some sensational players as well, but I just can't. I think the momentum that the Broncos have this year at Suncorp plays a huge part in this game.
Love it, mate. I love what the Broncos have done all year. I reckon they've been absolutely magnificent. They just keep lifting the bar. They throw it around. They play a great brand of rugby league for mine. And, I reckon they're going to have a good win on the weekend. And I reckon they're going to keep marching, Gids, and they're going to knock the Panthers off in the big one, I reckon, in a couple of weeks' time. I love it. Now, listen, last week, your Knights let you down, of course, mate. 1 from 2. You're all over the Storm. And then obviously went the Knights and your Gids get on, mate. Gagai anytime try scorer, Man anytime try scorer, Knights 1-12. So, mate, it's probably your first hiccup, I reckon, in about 10 weeks, to be honest, because you've been in good nick.
Decent run, mate. But back to the field now. But I do have a multi, mate, for this week for the Gids Get On.
What do we got?
Share that one now.
What do we got,
mate? I am going to go the Broncos and the Warriors game, and I'm going to jump. I've got a 4-leg multi, mate. I've just been on the Palmerbet app there before the call, and I'm going to go actually just with the speed and the momentum and the enthusiasm of the young Broncos team. I'm going to go them 13 plus.
Yep.
Team to score first, so it could be a goal or a try or a field goal. Broncos again.
Yep.
First try also to go to the Broncos. But the team to score last, I'm going to go the Warriors. I just think
Right.
they'll continue to fight in this game. And I think with a bit of flair, they might be able to score the last points.
What odds there,
So,
Gid?
mate, $9.30, 4-leg multi. Not bad.
Absolutely love it. So you're thinking both games, 13 plus for both teams to be commanding, which is
Yeah.
really
And mate, I think so, mate, because of the probably more swaying towards the side of the week off. I just think the week off,
fresh legs,
both those teams, mate, would have
home
watched the
decks.
finals last week. They would have probably all watched it as a team, having a feed or a barbie, and they would have been chopping it a bit last week. But coach would have been just pulling the reins, mate, back, and they'll just unleash them this week. And I think they'll be fresh and enthusiastic, both Penrith and the Broncos.
Going to be a cracking round, that is for sure. And there's no next week for the losers. That is season 2023 over. Talking about shindigs, how'd your little shindig in the man cave go? Watching your
mate, it was good. Well, it was a bit deflating, mate. When we dropped the ball in the first set of the game, I must admit that. But no, I had the coach's wife over here, Mrs. O'Brien. I had Bedsy's wife. The boys were over in NZ, of course, and I had a couple of old boys here, mate, as well. So we had a nice little crew, mate, here, and we cheered the team on. We were remaining optimistic, mate, even when they were down sort of 16-0 and scored first in the second half. But you know what? We're all proud of them for the last 10 weeks. So we'll watch intently, mate, over the next fortnight to see who's holding the trophy.
Mate,
about 10 days' time.
Mate, it's going to wind up really quickly, Gids, to be honest. But it has been such a sensational season, and there's still a little bit more to play out too. There's you can't deny like a side like the Melbourne Storm, who've just got a wonderful coach and a wonderful ability to get up, and then you got a side like the Warriors, mate, that are they've kind of come from nowhere this year. There's going to be a real belief there. They've had to do the hard yards through COVID. The last 3 years. So, plenty more to play out. Now, listen, download that Palmerbet app. You can play out as well. It is an easy app to navigate and get through. And as we always say, gamble responsibly and always think about what you're gambling with. But they are a good crew and they've always got plenty of things on offer in that Palmerbet app, that is for sure. Gids, looking forward to this week, mate. Looking forward to the next 2 weeks, to be honest. It's really, really exciting times, big fella. And you have yourself a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to catching up again next week.
100%, Matty. See you next week. All the best with your tips this week, team. Good luck. Hope your team gets up.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.